I've got a table that sits right near where I sit a lot. And especially when my hand is there and I'm just relaxing, my hand is within 6 inches of a gun and nobody would know. And hi there, and welcome to the Guns Podcast US, brought to you by gunsmagazine.com and EOTech. I'm your host, Brent Wheat, and we thank you for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we chat about the interesting stuff that makes up the world of shooting. Before we join our co-host, Roy Huntington, and talk about some fun stuff today, quick word from our great sponsor, EOTech.
Best known for their legendary holographic weapon sights, EOTech is built for speed, precision, and rock-solid reliability. That focus extends across their lineup, including high-performance rifle scopes for tactical use and hunting, plus durable pistol optics for professionals and enthusiasts alike. EOTech also delivers advanced night vision, thermal, and laser systems trusted by military and law enforcement worldwide. To explore the full lineup, visit eotechinc.com.
Well, hello there, Roy. How are you today?
Raring to go.
Well, I am too. I've had a good day all day and went to a meeting that I thought was going to be painful and nobody got thrown out or argued. It's been a good day all the way around. And I also have to point out that I think you can see it in the shot. The on the air sign is illuminated. You mentioned there's been a couple of comments about that, and my kids got that for me as a Christmas gift a couple of years ago, and I think I put it up about a year ago, and I have to use a battery pack to turn it on, and I think last episode, I just completely forgot. There's kind of a checklist of things I got to do to get everything set up and ready, and I didn't do it, so I apologize. The sign is there, it's mounted to the wall, and it's ready to go, and we're on the air and ready to go. So anyway, the topic today is something that came out of a conversation I had over the past weekend. We were talking about where we stage guns in our house, and I've got a buddy, and at one point it almost turned into a kind of a friendly one-up, but it's something that's always intrigued me because I've always been interested in hearing where people stage firearms in their home. And I thought, we've never talked about that. We've touched on it. Yeah, I keep a gun here. I like to put a gun there. But I thought today, the entire topic, we're going to talk about that. And I'm sure we'll probably get into a story or two. But before we get started, of course, disclaimer, if you have small people around or irresponsible people, many of the things we're going to talk about are not safe or prudent. So you have to be smart enough. Again, in my case, I've got a laminated sheet checklist that has, it says check guns and has all the locations. And that's on the inside of the toy box that the kids always go to, the grandkids, when they show up. So safety is paramount. But for those folks who are in a position where they do want to have firearms readily available, we're going to talk about that today. So that was kind of long, Roy, but I've got to laugh. When it comes to guns staged, you may be the king. You've pretty much got them every place. So your philosophy overall. Where do you want a gun in your house, Roy?
Well, it's interesting. I think for me, it's two different categories. I think if you're someone who does not carry a gun at home, in other words, if you don't have one on you or in your pocket, then you probably should stage some guns around the house for defensive purposes. I would like to say, though, that if you're more than a second or 2 seconds away from your gun, you're too far.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's like, bang, it's happening. So if you're more than a step or two to your gun, so in some situations that would mean you'd have to have guns pretty much staged everywhere. And to me, why not just stick one in your pocket?
Yeah.
Yep. And in my case is that I do have some guns staged around the house, but almost all of them are because we get unannounced varmints and critters. And
of the four-legged kind.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm chasing a couple of coyotes who have been showing up on the game camera all the time. So I have my coyote gun staged by the back door. It's getting to be close to fawn season here, And we have a lot of deer on our property, and so we like to try to keep the coyote herd down. I've got a couple 22 rifles, and that kind of stuff. But like I said, those are mostly for fun. Keep the squirrel population down and stuff like that. My honest defensive guns would be in my pocket or on my body.
Yeah.
But having said that, I guess if you're living in town and your wife doesn't want you to carry a gun on you all the time, sorry, ladies, or maybe your husband doesn't want you to carry a gun on you all the time, then the reality of where do you stage a gun comes up.
Well, it's to me, it's always been fascinating, and I'm blessed to have enough firearms that I can have them scattered throughout my living arrangement. And I will say though, Roy, that since as we talked about last time, now that I have a 38 that lives in my pocket 24/7 almost, I still keep my guns scattered about. That's that 2 is 1 is none. And I figure it's not hurting anything. And it was funny. The kids were coming over for Easter or something. And the day after, we actually had our Easter on Saturday. On Easter Sunday, my wife's like, "Where's the shotgun and it's such and such?" And I'm like, I put it away. I locked it away to be safe, but we'll get that back. So that was the first time she ever mentioned that. I thought that was interesting that I've got one of those little short shotguns that are legal, and it is hanging very close to the front door. And it again, I've got, if something happens at the front door, it's likely going to happen fast. If you've ever had the occasion to kick a door or see it kicked in, it doesn't take very long. But at least I've got a heavier firepower within a couple of steps of the door. And apparently my wife likes it being there. So I thought that was interesting.
That's really true. I will say that I do have a staged gun, and that's the standard bedside table gun that comes out of a drawer, at nighttime. Yeah. So, but because I have a couple of racks of guns, there is an 870 there, which I normally use for chasing raccoons at nighttime, but it could certainly do double duty. I would caution people that you need to train though if you're going to do that, because it's happened to me here. I got a new 22 rifle not too long ago, and I put it somewhere that I don't normally stage a 22 rifle, and then when I saw the gray squirrel, I think it was, I'd had a second or two, well, more than that. I had like 5 seconds, and I was going like, where is that? Now, what did I do with that gun? And so so I would caution you that if you have a gun in the kitchen cabinet and a gun behind the seat of your easy chair and a gun over here and a gun over there and a gun over there, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And especially if you have to engage somebody at your front door, then you make a, tactical retreat to the bedroom to your second gun. Or as Clint Smith says, his handgun is to fight your way to your rifle that you should never have put down to begin with,
Yeah, exactly.
Which is true. But what I've found though is that if something happens, because it's happened to me before, is you go, whoa, there's something there, or there's something going on. I need a gun. And then there's this little dance you do in your brain about, okay, where's the gun? And then if you're right here, do I go for the kitchen gun? Or do I go for the easy chair gun? So it's easy just to get smug because you say, oh, I'm going to stage these guns around my house and stuff. But trust me, when the pink elephant steps in the front door, unless this is something you do, remember we talked about play what if?
Exactly.
And unless you've been playing what if all the time, like I'm walking down the hallway and suddenly something's happening. Which gun would I go to? Unless you play that, what's going to happen is you're going to have brain freeze. And it's like, kitchen. I'll go to the kitchen gun, right?
Yeah.
It's already too late. Yeah.
Well, that was a great point that I hadn't thought about, but I have done that with every single gun that I have. I've got one near my easy chair, and I've thought, okay, if A happens, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this. I'm going to go there, go to another gun, and I've kind of war gamed that through. I've got the gun near the front door because again, I'm within a few steps of the front door. Am I going to have time to even get it? So I've kind of worked that through that if I do have time to get it, here's what I want to do. And part of that is the whole positioning and, just standing there backlit with your gun, that just makes you a target. So you got to think that through. And I've also talked to my beloved wife, who does not necessarily carry her gun very often, but she likes the idea of having them scattered in different places. So we've kind of talked about that. If this happens, you go here and get this gun and be ready to do whatever needs to be done. So anyway, it's not just putting a gun there. And I would say that's probably the biggest problem that I've identified is when you talk to guys, and we've both seen this from being cops, is, well, I've got a gun here and here and here. Well, so, I've got a piano, but I don't play it. So that doesn't make me a musician. But anyway, all those caveats apply, and don't just put a gun there and think, now I'm safe. I'm ready to protect. So that's the mental gymnastics you need to go through, play the what if, kind of war game these scenarios. But let's go ahead and talk about some of the places that we've seen, we've heard. We're not saying we've done any of this. We're not saying we didn't do any of this, but I'm just always fascinated to hear the inventiveness of how people stage firearms. So I'll just kind of go through a list, Roy, and let me point out one thing before we get down there. I don't think you were totally enthusiastic about this topic. But the more we talk, it's like, but you got a gun here and here and here. So you've got a lot of firearms staged, and I know they're for varmints, but I think it's one of those things you don't think about as, Roy Huntington tactical fort against all. It's just that's kind of what you do. So I thought that was somewhat entertaining.
See, in my mind, those aren't my defensive guns. So
right.
So if something happens, I don't think, I'm going to run over there and get that gun. If something happens here, I reach in my pocket.
Yeah.
That is what I do and how I train. So, but there is, everybody has that. And I think cops are the same way. I remember one time, and we'll go over your list, but I remember one time they changed the way the shotgun lock was in the police cars.
Yeah.
So we had mechanical locks. I don't know if they had them when you were on the police department. Yep. So you had your 870 mounted vertically, usually in the passenger side, and it had a clamp that sort of wrapped around it. And ours had a brass push button lock. And so if you got out of the car, you would push the lock, and that would lock the shotgun in the car. And when you got back in the car, at least what I did was I had a separate shotgun lock key on a clip. And so I would reach over and unlock it, right? And leave the key in it. And so if you need the shotgun, you just reach over and kind of hold it, push the button with your thumb, it flips open, and the shotgun comes out. Well, they changed it, and they went to an electronic lock.
Yeah.
Which had a hidden button, right? Which none of us could remember.
That's a problem.
It's like, it's a felony hot stop and we're covering somebody, and you would reach up to the shotgun to push the unlock button to get the shotgun out and it's not there. And from personal experience, there's just like panic filled 3 seconds, while your brain catches up to what's going on, and then you go, oh, wait, it's the button down here, right? And then you reach underneath the dashboard or, wherever we put it. But no, and so those are cops who do it every day, and there was still that little befuddlement. It wasn't just me. We all had that problem when we made the transition. Yep. So that goes a little bit toward what we're talking about.
Yeah. Did you guys have the lock? It looked like a vending machine lock. It had the round key and it just took forever. Yeah. And then we went to
that was after.
Hidden... Oh, really?
Yeah, we had a regular little, like a locker key, know. Yeah, and you're right, though. They transitioned to the round locks, and I have to say they worked, though, because I remember we had a police car stolen one time, and the guy tried to rip the the shotgun out, and
Yep.
he ended up actually physically bending the shotgun,
Yeah.
but he never got it out. So,
Well, and another corollary here is, and I'm sure you guys ran into that with pool cars like we did, that if one generation of rack had a certain type, and then another generation of rack might had it in a different place, and a third one might have been the push button. And yeah, for until we realized standardization is probably a good thing, it you kind of had to go through that whole thing of, okay, how do I release the shotgun from the car? Because yeah, it seems like 3 seconds, or it maybe 3 seconds seems like 3.5 days. So,
well, and you just said something really important, which is going to talk about what you're going to list, which is standardization. And so
yeah,
if you do want to stage guns, like I know a couple of people who stage guns, but there's 2 guns in their house and they're always in exactly the same spot. Like they don't say, oh, well, I'm going to the living room, so I'll move my gun over there,
yeah,
because trust me, you won't remember that. You're going to go back to where it's been for the last 3 years.
yeah.
And when you get there, it's not there, then you'll have a terror-filled 5 seconds while you remember that it's really in the other room, so.
Yeah, that's funny. And I just chalked it up to OCD, but even where I've got the shotgun hanging, it has to face a certain way because I've mentally rehearsed grabbing it a certain way. And the gun that is near my chair, it's the exact same thing. That one time I remember I reached for it, it not in a situation, just, checking that it's there and everything's good. I thought I'd pull it out and make sure there's no dust bunnies or mice living in it. And the grip was facing the wrong way. And it was probably a half second or 1 second that kind of hung me up. But I thought, man, that would be a bad day if somebody's coming through the door and I needed to get to that gun. So yeah, you made a good point that it's got to be a certain way all the time, and you have to rehearse and be ready. That it should almost be instinctive. Like that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people realize that even carry guns until you do it like cops, to where we've made tens of thousands of presentations. I've had a lot of guys say that, you get into a situation and suddenly he's got a gun. Oh, I've got a gun too. How did that get there? It's so automatic, and that's what it's got to be. So, well, anyway, let's get to and go ahead, make your point.
Well, you bring up a very good point, and a friend of mine had a gun in a fanny pack a million years ago, and he was sitting in his car, and it was a small frame revolver, and it was kind of too big of a fanny pack, and so he was right-handed, and so somebody came up to his car unexpectedly, and my friend reached into his fanny pack to put his hand on his gun, and the gun had rotated 180 degrees. So rather than the grip being down, so your hand could close on it, the grip was up. And so he put his hand in there, and for 5 seconds was completely, utterly confused about what was happening. And by then the guy was he realized the guy was a transient. He was trying to, get some petty cash or something. But that changed everything for my friend. I mean, he immediately fixed the fanny pack, got one that fit correctly, Yep. But I mean, we are such creatures of habits. And when you're confronted with something different like that, I have tools I use like that, and so a socket wrench that is the one you use all the time, and then you use another one when you find yourself automatically trying to push the wrong release button or something. So, all right, well, tell us where we should and shouldn't put our guns.
Okay. My favorite, and it's no big deal, but I always feel clever when I think of this, is I've got a table that sits right near where I sit a lot, and especially when my hand is there and I'm just relaxing, my hand is within 6 inches of a gun, and nobody would know. And the way I do that is one of these gun magnets, and this thing is stupid strong. I nearly crushed my fingers when 2 of them got together. They are that strong, but I've got it mounted under a piece of furniture, and short of doing a fully destructive turn the furniture over, you'd never find it, but it's right next to my hand, and I've got a couple of those, and it is so it is amazingly useful provided you get a good quality one. Mine is from a brand name that escapes me at the moment, but it's actually a little bit of effort to get it off the magnet. It's that strong, so I don't have to worry about suddenly, we're sitting there, we hear clunk, and a gun falls out from under the furniture. But it's very handy, and it makes me feel better knowing that even if I've got a gun in my pocket, because we've talked about if you're sitting in your chair with a gun in your pocket, you got to do some Macarena and stupid people tricks to get to it, whereas I can just snake my hand near that piece of furniture and have a full-size pistol with a light and a TV on top, and it just is that quick. So those magnets I'm a big fan of. So you got any magnets, Roy?
I don't, but your point is important. Like most burglars, they want to get in and get out. And so they go in the bedrooms, they open the drawers, they look in the drawers, they look in some real obvious places like that. They open closet doors, they reach on top of closets, and then they take whatever they can lay their hands on, and then they're gone. So whatever guns you stage, if you think you're being cagey and you put it underneath your underwear in your drawer, well, you're not really being cagey. So, but what you're talking about, I mean, that kind of stuff makes good sense. There's a whole genre of hide your gun furniture and things.
Wall hangings. I know people that have pictures on the walls that contain all kinds of guns and stuff. I've got a friend who, I'm not going to name names, but his staged gun near the front door is a picture, and unless you really knew what you were looking for, it'd be hard to find. So that stuff's out there.
Well, there's a a guy that I know who asked me to make him it's like a tissue box to hold a full-size box of tissues, right? But you can buy these little half-size boxes of tissues. And
really?
He designed this. It was a really clever design. And he said, could you make this for me? I said, yeah, that looks interesting. It was easy, right? And so basically you can either pull a tissue out, or you can just sort of grab the top of the box and pull the whole box lid off, and then there's a pistol sitting underneath it.
Oh, that's cool.
I know it was really cool because I thought, gee, if you're being held hostage or something, and then you can go like, oh man, I just need a tissue because I got something in my eye. It's like, bing. But
surprise.
That kind of stuff. Yeah, you see I've seen such clever ones where it's like a coffee table, you push a button and it's like boop, comes up, or like on the header of a bed. I've seen a couple where it'll hold guns in different ways. You can just like reach up and your hand's hitting the back. It'll drop a shotgun right into your hand.
Yeah. Well, those magnets are wonderful because on the headboard, a big stout headboard, you can have a gun right by your head and nobody would see it unless they're looking behind your headboard, which again, most folks are not going to do. So
it's true. Speaking of that, do what you want to do, but I don't recommend putting a gun under your pillow because, I don't know, if you're like me, I'm tossing and turning, and, you put your arm under the pillow and you do and then invariably what I've heard this from people was that, who have tried this, and then, so the gun slips back and then goes behind the pillow and down on the floor, right? And so that's just a bad idea. Yeah, you're probably not going to shoot yourself in the head or your friend, but it's like that is not really a good place to put it. So, well,
on that same topic, I was going to say when we were talking about furniture, and again, I know you and I have seen this countless times as cops, don't put it down in the cushions. I've seen people put shotguns and rifles, lots of pistols. It's bad for a lot of different reasons. First of all is the gunge and dust bunnies, or dust buffaloes, as you call it. I've done searches, and you have too. The stuff that accumulates in most couches is horrifying. Food and gunk and junk and things I don't even want to identify. It's just a bad idea. And especially like your sofa, you may say you have the preacher and his wife over and you forget there's a gun in there. It'll be like, oh, hey, there's a pistol right there. So yeah, if that's all you got, I guess it's okay. But I've never been a big fan of sticking guns down in sofa cushions and chair cushions.
I agree with you, and they tend to migrate around, you know.
Yeah.
So when I used to write the handgun leather column for American Handgunner magazine, I recall specifically I wrote an article about a similar topic as this, and what I did was I experimented with all that kind of stuff. And I had remember the ring blue guns? I think they're still around. So they look like a real gun, right? But they're inert. Yeah. And I remember I had an easy chair, and so I stuffed a ring gun down in the pocket down there. And then I my easy chair back like that, and it disappeared down underneath it. And I thought, well, that was unexpected. You know, it was a major ordeal to try to dig it back out again. And I'm just surprised at how they migrate around. I mean, I tried it in the couch, and just getting up and sitting down and getting up and sitting down, it tends to move around, or it slowly will rotate to where the grip's up, you know, and all that's like a really bad. I mean, I suppose it's different if I'm going to sit in my easy chair right now. So you tuck your gun next to you while you're in the easy chair. And then when you get up, you take your gun back and put it in your pocket. You know, that might be one thing, but I like your magnet idea. I know exactly what you're talking about, which actually is the next thing is, to me, because I know people are going to be asking about this in the comments, are the various little lock boxes and all that kind of stuff, you know, and they have a place, especially if you've got kids, you know, or as you say, if Uncle Fred lives with you and you don't really trust Uncle Fred with guns, you know. To me, though, the downside is what we've said many times, and we just said it earlier, is that if you need a gun, you need a gun, and if it's more than, I mean, if you're 5 seconds away from having your gun in your hand, chances are very good that that's too late. You know, I mean, not all the time, right? But a lot of the time.
I take a little bit of a different tack. I have a Streamlight, and I can't think of the name of it, lockbox. It's the only lockbox I've got for a gun, but that's my bedside nightstand gun. And the reason being, I intentionally chose that, aside from just security, it's you open I'm giving away things I probably shouldn't, but if you open the drawer on my side of the bed, there's a box with a gun, and around it I've got my 17 flashlights and spare mags and all that. But this takes, I think, 4 or 5 buttons, and they're mechanical, which I've always not trusted electronic locks because, you know, and anything mechanical can fail. But this one is strictly human powered, and I've got it set up for 2 buttons, of which I know. And the idea behind that, aside from just general security for the kids, the grandkids coming over, is the idea that if I wake up and I'm still a little groggy, I at least need to be cognizant enough to operate those 2 buttons in the right sequence. And I know a lot of, oh, you'll be dead by then. Yeah, you may be absolutely right, but I just feel like I know how it takes me a moment to kind of get coherent, and I want that little bit of a pause before I've got a gun in my hand. And again, your mileage may vary, do it how you want, but that's what I've chosen just because I think it makes sense. And I'll tell you a corollary to that. After I've started doing it, I had a bump in the night. And as we've talked before, if you think somebody's coming to the front door, you need to barricade and be ready for them. But this was that noise that we all go, I'm not going to call the police, but I want to go check it out. I want to have a gun with me. For the life of me, I couldn't remember the combination. So every night, and I don't do it anymore because it's ingrained, but it's like I said, what's the combo? It's such and such. What's the I mean, I did that for like a month, drilling it in. And I periodically, when I open the drawer or whatever, it's like, oh, I know what the combo is. So again, I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just saying it's my answer. And I hope I'm never in a situation where I have to get the gun instantaneously to save our lives. But as we've talked before, the layered security aspect, dogs, exterior lights, nosy neighbors, alarm system, video cameras. It would be somewhat unlikely for somebody to be on top of me before I at least had a few seconds warning. So anyway, that was kind of a long answer to something you brought up, but that's people like to hear how we're doing it, and that's how I'm doing my bedside gun. So that was long, Roy, but
you brought up all the important points about those things, and I have tested the electronic ones, and I've had mine fail. I mean, maybe the modern technology is a lot better, but batteries die, switches don't work.
Yep.
I know I've been surprised to go beep 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 beep, push the button and it doesn't pop open.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what now? Right.
Yep.
And I think though, it's like training unless it's intuitive. It's like if you reach down and your finger touches something hot, what do? You automatically jerk your hand back, right? It's autonomic. You have no control over that. You've done that a million times in your life. It's like, ouch, that's hot, right? And so your response to these kind of things should be the same way. It's like you with your lockbox. When you're doing that process, it's automatic. I mean, you're not even thinking 7, 9. It's just automatic, right?
Well, so, that's what I call it. Immediate. I mean, it's a military term. Immediate action drills. If this happens, you do this. You don't think about it. You don't decide. If this happens, I do this. And that's how I drilled myself on those buttons. If I hear the front door crashing open or something like that, I'm not going to, turn on the light. Hey, honey, I roll over and my finger go to those buttons, and then we'll sort it out from there. But that's what I've got my mind trained to do.
And it's automatic though. Yeah. It's not like the door's crashing. You should already be moving automatically.
Yeah.
But I think like so many people, if they buy a gun, they load it, they shoot it or not the first time. Right.
Yeah.
And they put it away. Maybe they put it away in a lockbox, and then that's it. That's the total amount of their engagement in that situation. Yeah. And so 6 months from then or 4 years from then, they go, oh, I think I need to get the gun out. And then it's just like litany of, well, where did I put it? And then when they get the box, it's like, well, how do you open this again? And exactly. People may laugh at this, but you and I both know that's exactly what happens a lot of times. And
I think I've told the story before. It happened to me that my former wife had a serious medical emergency, and I had to call 911. I remember, I was a cop. I had been a dispatcher. I knew the numbers, and of course, I knew 911. I had the hardest time getting my 911. And that always stuck with me, that because I was under tremendous stress and pressure, and I was worried to death about her and all the things going on. It just didn't. If I wanted to dial 911 right now, it'd be beep 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 beep. But this was like a 9 and 1. So if that's a challenge, what I was going to say about the lock boxes, especially like the combo roller ones. You will never get that open under pressure. Never, ever, ever.
Well, because in your situation, and we both had that happen on duty, is that the majority of your ability to think is being sucked into whatever this situation is. And so there's very little brain stem use left over for doing an analytical something, that you haven't already practiced 10 million times. Like, you should be able to do that with your left hand without even thinking about it. It's like reaching in your pocket for your wallet. It's automatic. You don't think, I need to get my wallet. Now, where's my wallet again? And, but I think that's what we're talking about. Session guns is another thing, is that if you're really accomplished and you train and you do all that kind of stuff, great. Stash whatever gun you want to, however you want to. Chances are pretty good that you'll be prepared. You'll know where it is. You'll know how to use it. You've got plans. You've played what if. All that's great. That's how it should be. But the average schmo, though, may not be that person. And so they are going to have some Glock that they bought that maybe they shot one time when they bought it at the indoor range, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll have it in their lockbox because the guy behind the gun counter sold them a lockbox to go with it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a state that requires you to have a lockbox, and then it's probably going to be the cheapest lockbox that he could buy, and it's going to have one of those roller, release things. So then they'll load their gun, they'll put it in the lockbox, they'll put it in a drawer somewhere, they'll be very smug and happy that now they've done their, civic duty. And then the first time they need it, they'll go through that litany that we talked about earlier, which is where is it? Now what are the numbers? I've seen people write the numbers on top in a big Sharpie pen, which is fine, I mean, but I mean, okay, you're right. And then they open up and they get it out. Now they're confronted with, how does this work again? Is it, is there a safety? Do I have to put a magazine in it?
Yeah. Well, we haven't even talked about trigger locks. I mean, trigger locks are a good thing if there's people around your guns that you don't trust. But there's nothing worse than a trigger lock if you're talking about being in a situation where you need to defend yourself. So take trigger locks out of the equation. But I was trying to think. I haven't even looked at the time. We've just scratched the surface, but there's a couple more things I want to talk about. We haven't talked about cars, and I keep guns in my car. And I think there's a lot of, again, that could spend an entire show talking about different places, because I've been through that. We made Kydex holsters where they slipped underneath the steering wheel, clipped into the body panels. And there's all kinds of interesting, useful and unuseful ideas. But the point I wanted to make about vehicles is I've seen a lot of different holster types, and I've got a couple. The problem is they're very fast because your gun's right out there in the open. And unless you're in downtown Mogadishu, personally, speaking as a retired cop, I don't think that's a good idea, because the odds of being carjacked are fairly small. The odds of being stopped by law enforcement are much higher. And, I think Roy will agree with me. You walk up on somebody who's got a gun sitting right there. Roy told a story about the guy had a gear shift made out of a revolver. That's just not a real good idea. I mean, you're probably going to be okay, but as we say, you're going to have some splaining to do, and it might be at the muzzle of the officer's gun. So I think you should carry, guns in your car, but I really strongly believe that they need to be out of sight, and certainly not in the glove box, because you're going to be in that glove box if you get stopped. And we both had the experience, gun falls out, and oh, look, I've got a gun too. So your thoughts on that, Roy?
Well, I don't advocate anyone store a gun in their car.
Right.
I mean, I have seen devices where it's like a hidden, bolted in compartment, that you keep a gun someplace that no one's going to just find in passing. But if you just keep it in your center console or something, well then, I mean, that's like steal me, please, and millions of cars are stolen every year. So I think that for me is that if you decide that when you get in the car, it's like a reader was telling me in a comment or a viewer, he said, I carry a pocket gun when I get in my car. He puts it in there's a little spot in between the seats. He said, and then I have a little cloth that I lay over it. And so, that way it's like keeps it out of the eyes of the passerby, or, if a cop does stop you, you keep your hands on the wheel and say, I would just like to say I have my concealed carry gun underneath that red cloth, know. So, and then when you get out of the car, you take your gun, you put it back in your holster, you get out of the car. So that would be the best thing. But yeah, I know what you mean. They have those, holsters that go underneath by the steering column, and there are all kinds of different places, and that's fine, but I don't think it should live there.
Well, I do
So,
practice what I preach because I'm working on selling one of my motorcycles, and it's been in the garage, and I'm going to work on it later today. But my trucks had to sit outside, and we're some of the few people in America, along with Roy Huntington, that we keep our garage clean enough that we put our two very expensive vehicles, relatively speaking, in the garage, and we don't keep all of our junk that is worth under $1,000. So having to park the truck out because the motorcycle was in there while I was working on it. I degunned and devaluabled everything in my truck. And we live in a very safe neighborhood. And like I said, I've got nosy neighbors and video cameras and all that. But I don't want anybody to be able to say, I was thinking the most horrible thing I could imagine is talking to one of the officers from my former agency going, yeah, I'm the dummy. I left the gun in the car in the driveway and they broke in and took it. That would just really upset me. So that's one of the things that, and it's a pain because valuables, anything worth stealing, because they break in for pocket change. They certainly would take your $200 Skinner knife or whatever. So I always sterilize my vehicle if I'm going to park it outside. But fortunately, I don't have to do that very often. So.
well, it's going to come up because when we talk about house carry in a different podcast, I was amazed at the number of people who say, well, I stage guns and I have a bathroom gun. And I was surprised at the number of people who actually physically have a shower gun. I got to say, I've never done that. I don't want to be that careful or that prepared,
Yeah.
But guys, like they buy a high point and they keep it up on the top shelf in the shower.
Yeah.
Or everybody's telling me they keep it in between the hand towels, and stuff like that. I mean, to me, if I was going to do that, it would be whatever my pocket gun was. If for some reason, I really felt that would be necessary, I would just take that gun in with me, in the bathroom or do whatever I was doing. But I'm like you, I have perimeter security and automatic lights and a dog that, would let me know what was going on. We have reinforced locks and doors. And so somebody would have to be really determined, to get in. And I would be well aware of it long before it was happening. And so, I'm not quite at that level. But, if I lived in an inner city 2-bedroom duplex, on the ground floor, then I would probably rethink that. So that I don't know what we proved, but yeah.
If you live in a place where there's bars on your windows, I could see very much so. But one quick last one that be interested to hear your take on it, Roy. My gun near the front door, I guess it's probably a pretty no-brainer idea. I got a coat closet like most folks have, and I was trying to think, how do I stage that shotgun there? So I rigged up something using some split rings and carabiners that if you move the coats from the right place, there's a shotgun hanging there. And I thought that was pretty, I thought that was kind of novel. And I know they make garment bags. Skinner Sights does. Andy. But I've never had one of those. It'd be interesting to try one. But no, I've got a shotgun that my wife likes, and she knows where it is. And we've taught, move this and it's right there. And then you can take it off really, really quick and easy. So, you probably haven't done that, have you, Roy?
I haven't, but I really admire the Skinner Sights one. I know he has that. It looks like a garment bag.
Garment bag, yeah.
And,
keep
and
an
it's
AR
made,
and magazines and
it's I think it's mostly made for people who live, hey, if you live in an apartment, and you don't really have a gun safe, well then it just looks like a garment bag, and then you keep some of your guns in there. I will though, I'll throw myself on my sword and make a confession that I have my house and we're really far off the road but I work in the garage a lot and I keep the door open, and there's been one or two occasions where someone I look around and there's somebody standing there, right? And then there's some lost, delivery driver or something. But there was one time specifically where when I turned and I saw him there, and that I really didn't know where I was going to go to get my gun. You know, I mean, I was at my workbench. I didn't have a gun in my pocket. This was years ago. So I realized right away it was fine. He just was, a lost delivery driver or something. But after that was done, as I realized, well, there was a shotgun right there, idiot, that I staged specifically for this. And that I had just, because what we talked about, you couldn't dial 911, right? Because your mind was so, and so my mind was so distracted by what was going on here. And I had not trained multiple times to just like, that's my go-to gun. And actually, that's what prompted me that, I'm sorry, my home gun is always in my pocket. So,
well,
all right.
one more, I've been wanting to have a garage gun, just stage, but I worry about corrosion and of course, people getting into it. So finally now I have a gun, unnamed type, in a secure steel container that might be marked something, like dog food or cat treats or something. And I kind of figure, because of all the places in our home where somebody could probably get in relatively unnoticed, it might be the garage, because we leave the door open sometimes. Now with the alarm system, it tells us if it's open, but I've done that before, left it open all night, which is the most horrifying, feeling when you go out. It's like, did you close the door? No. Did you open the door? No. It was open all night. So now we get a notification. But I work out there a lot, and I do a lot of yard work and gardening. And I just, again, I've got a 38 in my pocket, but I wanted something else handy. And so I came up with this nondescript, and the main concern I had was just that somebody saying, oh, if that says, emergency gun, or it's a gun locker, they're going to go, oh, that's worse. I can steal his tools and I can steal that. Well, the way I've got it set up, it's easily accessible. It's quick to get to, but most folks are going to ignore it and think I don't need any of that stuff. I've got his socket wrenches here. So,
well,
anyway.
That's I'd hide in plain sight thing, like the hidden furniture thing we were talking about. I'll leave with two things. Number one, I have a little dinger alarm, a little infrared alarm. It's portable, a little square box. I think I bought it at Harbor Freight years ago. And you can sit that at your open garage door. And if somebody crosses it, it goes ding dong.
That's not a
right?
bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a wired alarm or anything, but it lets them know, and they don't know. They think, somebody knows I'm here. The other thing that you can keep around the house and keep in your car is baseball bats. And no one thinks about it. You get a baseball bat by your front door. So if you have to beat the snot out of somebody, there it is right there, right? You put a baseball bat on your back seat, hook a baseball mitt over it, leave a softball next to it. And if you're ever stopped, it's like, well, what do you do with that? It's like, I play softball.
Yeah, exactly.
But you always have it there. So,
see, now that's funny, because one of my garage tools, and you'll get a kick out of this, is I do a lot of brake work for myself, my kids, and all that stuff. And sometimes, getting the a frozen nut or stud off that front disc brake is challenging. And I fought for years, and I've laid under the car and used my feet and all that. So I finally bit the bullet, and I bought a 48-inch half-inch drive breaker bar. And now if I got a stubborn knot, I'm not asking it to come off. It's coming off, or we're going to twist, the suspension off the car. But I was looking at that and I thought, it's obviously a tool, but man, that'd knock somebody clean out if you swung it on them. So it's handy.
Remember, this is something a lot of people forget, is that it's not always go to guns,
Right.
I mean, in other words, if you're at your front door and you've got some Looney Tune there, who's acting the fool or something, well, maybe you need to hold your baseball bat and say, you know what, it's time for you to leave. And it's like, everybody knows a baseball bat, and it's like, oh, well, he could hit me with that, and that would hurt a lot, right? And so, you don't always go to guns. So
that raises an interesting point. You and I have never talked about this, but you brought something up many podcasts ago, that the difference between being shot and being cut. everybody's been cut. We know, ow, that hurts. That's awful. I don't want that to happen. But to a lot of folks, the idea of being shot is an abstraction. You don't know what it feels like. You hear varying, response ranging from it didn't hurt at all to it was the most horrible pain imaginable. But everybody pretty much knows how it feels to get cut. And I would put a impact weapon, a ball bat, a half-inch breaker bar. We've all had our chime rung hitting our head or been hit by something. And I think most people would be like, I don't want that baseball bat to the head. So I kind of get that.
True.
So there's
think about it. In movies, how many guys you see, they get shot and they go, oh, and then they keep fighting. Yeah. Right. But usually if somebody gets whacked with something, what do? Thud.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know. We probably beat this into the dirt.
I don't think I could talk for days about this, but no, what I want is let folks leave comments. Let's hear some interesting places. Do you think that'll get us banned if people start talking about where they're hiding guns? I don't know, but it's YouTube. Who knows what they will or will not allow this week? But leave a comment and always couch it in terms of, I've got a friend who did this. Never say it's your house. But anyway, leave us a note or a comment on YouTube. And of course, you can reach out to us, editor@gunspodcast.us. And I think this will be a lively and interesting discussion. And maybe we can gather that up and talk about it in a future episode. So before we go, a quick word from our sponsor, EOTech.
To explore the full lineup, visit eotechinc.com.
Well, Roy, it was an interesting discussion, and it's one of those that it kind of left me. I've got more stuff to talk about, but we have a certain time limit we try to operate under. But maybe we'll approach this again. Or I've got a couple of buddies that I'm a mere amateur when it comes to that. I've got guys that have cut holes in the wall and got it's almost a intellectual exercise more so than a tactical one, but I find it fascinating. So anyway, any parting words as we toddle on out of here?
Well, I think if you just remember that all of these things are interconnected, and so the answer isn't, yes, I'm going to stage a gun. Then the next part of that equation is, and I'm going to train with it, and I'm going to practice how to get it, and I'm going to play whatever. Or, you know what I mean? Is that it's like most things, it's way more than just one thing. And I think too many novices especially think that I'm going to buy a gun and bring it home, put it in the door, and now I'm safe.
I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're not. So just remember that. So,
well, the fancy word I think of is holistic, ranging from cutting your shrubs to having a Master Blaster 5000 with a laser and a TV, but you can actually shoot it under stress and hit what you're aiming at. And then there's the whole issue we didn't even talk about. Roy kind of mentioned it. Maybe you don't need to go to guns. So it's, as they say at Gunsight, this is a thinking person's occupation, and hopefully we've given you a few ideas and thoughts that you can apply to your own life and what if it, and kind of have a plan in case the unimaginable happens. So anyway, it's great having chats with you, Roy. Like I said, leave us comments, drop us an email, and we'll be back next week with more good stuff. So on behalf of Roy Huntington, my co-host, of course, I'm Brent Wheat of the Guns Podcast US, reminding you yet again, now it's time to get out there and get shooting.